Welcome, everyone, to Tech 43, episode 9. Hopefully, being able to help you figure out what tech is for you. And the intro is getting better. It's there. That one, I'm going to keep that one. I'm going to keep that one. We have a couple guys here in the industry of mobile that will kind of give us their impressions on things we're going to talk about today. Say hi, Eddie.
Hello.
And say hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
He's okay. Not even addressing it. So today, slower week. There's been a couple things Apple's released that we're going to talk about and kind of get a feel for who these products are for, or why you should buy them, or why you should stay away from them. We'll plug Eddie and maybe he'll talk a little bit about his updates on his vehicle that have happened recently. But so the three things that I've seen, and I think that the tech community has seen come out recently: the new MacBook Air, the new Mac Mini, and the new iPads, the iPad Pros, and the new Apple Pencil and things like that. If we're going to start on the MacBook side of things, we have a refresh. I think it's been a couple of years that I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, but it's been a couple of years since we've seen anything done to that Air. We see a Retina display, which it didn't have before. They added Touch ID, a Force Touch trackpad. It's recycled aluminum. Exciting. Always about the environment. 13.3-inch display. Does Apple Pay with a Touch ID. They added the T2 chip for security. I think they talked about with the new iPhones as well. The newest keyboard, the butterfly keys that won't break if they get dirty, apparently. It is purely Thunderbolt 3 with 2 ports, a headphone jack. I believe it's 16 gigs of memory, up to 1.5 terabytes of SSD storage, which is super quick, but still, on a laptop, 1.5 terabytes is a decent amount. They upgraded the speakers, which is exciting. For $1,200, I think this is considered their entry level, if you will, as far as the MacBooks go. For $1,200, Eddie, who is this for? And is this even worth the money at $1,200? I mean, you kind of know the market for laptops in general. And we kind of always know that Windows laptops tend to come in with similar or not better specs for a lesser cost. So where does this sit, especially during the holidays?
I think that a lot of people are thinking the pricing's a little bit expensive, but with its competition, you have to look at the other, like Microsoft and Google. For something similar, they are comparable pricing. When I look at the Surface products, like the Surface Laptop 2, which starts around $1,200 for very similar specs, and the Pixel Slate, which when you put the same type of processor into it is also in that $1,000 range. I would say that if you're looking for name brand purchasing, there's things you get with that. You get your support, like when you buy a Surface product, or you buy a Chrome product, Google product, or you buy an Apple product, you can be sure that it's supported for the software updates are usually pretty smooth. You get them as far as, you get them. They don't really break anything. Drivers aren't really messed up. Like, it's always a pretty solid experience going as the device ages, because you typically don't go through laptops like you do phones. You can get a phone every year, every 2 years, maybe. Laptops you tend to keep for 4 or 5 years. I know, Mary's got a Lenovo tablet, or one of those yoga books that flip all the different kinds of
convertible ways. Or whatever you want to call it.
But it's, as of late, it's probably 4 years old now. But as of late, it's just every update, it's you're rolling the dice on what's going to work and what's not going to work. Like, the displays are messed up. It just doesn't operate. And so that got us talking into the conversation about, what should we do to replace this, because it keeps messing up. And And quite honestly, I think sticking with the manufacturer who makes the hardware, like Microsoft, like to go for Surface, or Apple for a MacBook, makes a ton of sense as far as just longevity goes, compatibility goes, and something of at least with Apple, and to a lesser extent Microsoft, you have a physical place to go for support. Like if you need something, or if you need to get something reinstalled, or something gets messed up, you can make an appointment to go to Microsoft Store or go to the Apple Store, get it fixed. You don't really necessarily have that level of support with just I don't want to say no name, but a
not first.
high,
I don't want to
like
say first party, I
not a
guess.
first, yeah. Like you get like an e-machine or something like that, and you're not going to get that level of support. That's where that cost comes from. The components, the build quality, and especially Microsoft and Apple and Google lately have been doing a great job with build quality, and that's something that is factored into that price. You get top of the line components that tend to last a long time. So, I mean, it's in there. The cost is in there. It's just that Apple has an advantage, is they have the name behind it. So a lot of folks that are going back to school, or they're looking for a laptop for school or for work, they're thinking, oh, MacBook Air, because it has the name behind it. But now that's something that Microsoft is coming up to, because the Surface is kind of wiggling its way in there as far as a known name brand, and a trusted name. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think I brought up the Surface to my mother when she was looking at work laptops, because we knew that it was just going to work really well with Windows. I think she ended up with a Dell XPS 13, which is top end stuff for 13-inch laptops at this point. But I think it's the ecosystem conversation, isn't it? The Mac OS. If you want integration with your phone and with your tablet, with whatever else it would be, I think I've seen it compared to the regular MacBook from last year, I guess, would be the refreshed 12-inch MacBook, which I think is a similar price but has a better processor and things like that. I'm trying to remember what was actually in. I don't remember what was in the MacBook, the regular MacBook, but a little bit better specs. It has the old keyboard, which some people are like, I can't deal with, because they're replacing them with the same thing, and it's just kind of a hot mess. But it's probably what you said. It's a good spot to be in, but it's just a decision of, do you want Mac OS or do you mind Windows, and if it's a work machine or not. So I think that's probably the only real difference.
I mean, for me, the way I look at something like a MacBook Air or like a Surface 3, right, or anything newer that falls into that price. I mean, like, that's great for, you're a freshman in college and you need a laptop. A MacBook is going to get you through all 4 years and probably more. You have that dedicated support if something goes wrong, where you can just, take it right to an Apple store and get the problem fixed. I mean, that's, my cousin had not the Air, because he had one of the old school, like, all white MacBooks, and that got him through 4 years of school and 6 years. So 2 more years while he was in the Peace Corps, until someone stole it in Peru. So as far as we know, it's still around, but you know what I mean? Like, it lasted that long, so if you're going to invest, $1,400 in a laptop, going to school, like, this is a great fit. 128 gig solid state drive. That's not bad. Most students that I knew in college used backup hard drives anyway. I mean, I backed everything up to an external hard drive. So, I mean, I think that's your target market. Or, like Eddie was also saying, young professionals too. It's portable, it's lightweight. If you're on the road doing traveling sales, for example, it's easy to carry around. to show your customers things. It's very easy to take into a Starbucks and then do email and work on it from there.
I think it's probably there's two types of shopping for laptops. You're in that $600, $700, $800 range, and then this range, and then there's a range above that, which is whatever Eddie's buying. But like, there's three cutoffs there, or three categories. If you're buying an Apple product, the ecosystem probably instantly puts it at least in the second range. I mean, of quality or whatever you'd want. So I guess the $1,000 to $1,200 range, based on what Brian just said, is how long are you going to be able to use it? Is it going to be, if you're buying two $600 laptops and they last you 3 years apiece, that's this $1,200 laptop lasts that, if not longer. I think you've broke even at that point.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in school, I bought 2 Dells. I went through 2 laptops while I was in school, and I paid $800 each, so that's $1,600. Whereas if I had bought a Mac freshman year, it would probably still be alive now.
And there's other considerations too, like there's when you buy a laptop for $600 or $700, there's concessions that are made. It just is. There's components are not of the same quality. There's not, the speed isn't there. You don't have the same, even if they'll always say, oh yeah, they've got this particular processor in there, but it's always a different type of processor, like a U generation or a Y generation, where they advertise the chip, but it's not really that chip. It's just, they have, the way Intel does things, they have a name for a chip, and then there's a variety of different flavors of that chip. But there's things like hard drives, like now that everything's solid state, you don't have that boot up time. Like I can think of plenty of times with people I know with cheaper laptops, that $600-$700 range, that if they turn it off, it takes 5 minutes to turn back on. And if you're in class and you're trying to do something and then it shuts off, it's just like, is saving a couple $100 worth a series of stressful events that can occur over the course of ownership of that, whether it's, having to wait an extra 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds for things to happen, having it go through a reboot, and then you shouldn't have to, if your laptop were to reboot, it shouldn't like destroy the plans that you had going forward. And that happens to people. Like, it's just, they're like, oh.
It happens to this guy right here with my $700 laptop that I bought 5 years ago.
I just don't think that you see that many issues in that Apple ecosystem with these laptops, besides the keyboard conversation from the last generations that they fixed with the new butterfly switches, or the membrane they added so it doesn't die when air hits it. I mean, you don't hear a ton about issues with Mac OS lasting or these laptops lasting. So it's an investment, which is, I think, every Apple product we've talked about is an investment in the product itself, but also the ecosystem and what you're throwing yourself into. So I keep coming back to the fact of spend the $1,200 instead of the $600 twice, and just enjoy it for at least that probably 4 years or longer. And it's a good spend, unless you're doing something super intensive. I mean, I think, Eddie, you're probably asking more of your computers than what this thing's going to do.
Yeah, that's not for me, but I'm in a 1% category as far as content creation goes. You can't use that machine for you can't use it sanely in that respect. The other 99% that are just using it as a laptop, a reliable laptop that they open up, they can send some messages, they can check Facebook, they can send emails, they can do their shopping, they can do
even this sort of thing, like the live streaming and the FaceTime.
Sure, 100%. And you've got folks who will, they're collaborating through like Google Drive or another cloud-based service, like it gets that kind of stuff done, no problem. But your heavy content tasks like video editing, 3D modeling and rendering, that kind of stuff, those people know who they are. They're not going to accidentally buy this. Like it's not, I know a lot of people that will go and shop for laptops and they might run into something. Like if you are in that field, you're not going to accidentally purchase something. You know exactly what it is. It's you can't just, if it's not on the floor, you go to Best Buy, it's not going to be there. Like it's the one thing that they don't put out because 4 people bought it ever. So like that's
it makes sense. So I think at the end of the day, we can sit here and say, if you want to make an investment on a product that'll last you the time frame and you're not going to have issues with it, you can make an investment in something like this MacBook Air for the 95% of people that are using a laptop for certain things, not the content creation, the video high-end video editing that some are doing. You can use this type of product for anything else other than that. So we're looking at being able to recommend this for almost anybody else to be able to last what the amount of time that they would need it and get the value out of it, I guess. So we're looking at value. You would agree, Brian, I would imagine, based on what you said.
Absolutely. Based on personal experience, buy a more expensive laptop. Spend the extra money on something good. Unless you're really in a pinch. And in that case, buy a Chromebook.
Fair enough. I was curious about that. I know that it's a lot of the stuff has been up and down with what I've seen online. Being at $11.99 price point, some people are like, "Is it worth it?" I think we basically came to the conclusion that it is. I mean, based on what it is and what it can do for you. So there's that. On the computer end of Apple as well, the first refresh of the Mac Mini since I think we talked about it before we got on 4 years ago.
It's about that.
Yeah. So Eddie, explain a little bit real quick what a Mac Mini is. So people that may not know, since it hasn't been around for a minute, what exactly this is.
It's like a desktop. It's a small portable desktop that was meant to
be big.
Yeah, it's tiny.
It's like the size of an iPad, something like that.
Yes. Maybe smaller than, it's thicker.
Smaller.
Yeah, it's smaller than that. Maybe a mini, a little smaller than a mini was. In theory, you could get one and have monitors in different locations and pick it up easily and transport it, plug it into a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse and take your work with you. They can get pretty powerful, but their strength is in numbers. They have the ability to be, multiple Mac Minis can be put together.
Like a tethering aspect almost.
Into like a farm that you can be very heavy with, creation, and they would fit the bill. So it's not cheap, but of course, if you need that level of performance, you're typically producing something that it's producing where time is money. So if it's a job where time is money, the fact that it's so expensive doesn't matter, that it's shaving precious seconds off of whatever you're doing, in which case it will ultimately pay itself back.
So I guess if I can make an analogy for this, it's basically, you used to have desktops that were, you had a tower and then you had your monitor and all this other stuff. So Apple's version of that is a little square box that you connect to a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse that you have to have already, or to purchase those, because this is just the box with all of the imports, the ports and things on the back. So basically it's if you ever saw a computer that had a tower and then that connected to a display or a monitor, and then you had your keyboard and everything connected to that, that's what this is. But it's giving you Mac OS, and it's tiny, and that's basically what we're looking at.
If you want, Mark, I'll share my screen. Share my screen real quick.
Sure.
So I pulled up a few images of it. Let's get that screen 2. And can you see that little tiny box? There it is. That magical. That's it. That's a Mac Mini. So it's about yay big. Yeah, it's about what, 6 inches across. It's a square, and it's about 4 inches thick, maybe. So that's what you're looking at, and that's where you can just hook it into a monitor like that, have your mouse, have your keyboard, and you're set. Or you can do this setup and daisy chain those bad boys together, like Eddie was saying, into one massive mini supercomputer.
Yeah, they're CPU heavy, so rendering, video editing, video rendering, 3D modeling and rendering. That's what they excel at because they're so CPU heavy. You wouldn't game on them, but the way that Apple has them designed, Apple also has their eGPU towers, and those are compatible. So in theory, you could plug an eGPU into that for the graphics performance. And I mean, you can build a serious performance machine out of them. It's just that it's not cost effective with
you're
the
just
other
doing it to
options that are
do it
available.
at that point.
Yeah, you're just like, hey, I wonder if I could do this. But at that point, once you buy 3 of those in an eGPU, you're already at the cost of a Mac Pro. So
basically what we're looking at is 3 on the back end. We're looking at 3 Thunderbolt 3 port, or it has Thunderbolt 3. I think there's a few of them on the back of that, or USB 3.0 HDMI. Comes in a 6-core quad-core process, 6-core and quad-core processor options. DDR4 memory up to 64 gigs, up to 2 terabytes of SSD storage. I think the pricing starts at $799 for one of those at 128 gig quad core i3 processor, which some people were like, that's kind of meh for that processor and that price point. And then they go up from there. I think we talked about before we started, you can spec these things up to like $4,000. So based on, I mean, let's eliminate the fact you can put all these together because you want to do all kinds of goofy stuff. To buy one of these, what type of person would buy one of these to use for what?
I would say one of the less expensive ones would be something you'd buy for maybe a non-tech savvy family member or somebody who was an Apple person, but it would be something that I sent, my little one off to school with, like to college. It would be doesn't take up much space. It's easy to take around with them. They could take it to college with them, plug it into their display there. And then when they leave for the weekend or they come home, they can unplug it, take it home and plug it in there. Like instead of having several computers all over the place, it's just something you can easily transport. So I could definitely see that for other family members. It would make a really great computer at the lower end. At the higher end, you're looking at somebody who's maybe looking to get into some type of maybe YouTube videos or things like that. I mean, you can definitely get it spec'd with the power that you need to not price yourself out. Although I would argue that you could probably get a pretty reasonable Windows machine to do your editing on.
It's always how that happens.
But in that case, I mean, just sticking with the Mac Mini, though, I would say that they have one of them to cover the whole spectrum from someone who's, advertising, in marketing and advertising, that have to take it around to show clients and do things. I mean, you have a ton of versatility with something that small that you would never have carrying around a giant desktop.
And there's some customization with it to be able to add more RAM, I believe, is the one thing that you can swap out yourself. It's as far as being modular, if you will. You can add more RAM to it from what I understand. And I think that was the only thing you can add. Everything else you have to buy when you order it from Apple. I mean, I have a 2015 MacBook Pro, which is, I think, one of the base models, mid-year or end of year. I think this, for me, I got this for like $800 open box at Best Buy. So I think that entry-level Mac Mini may kind of cover me with a couple more of the better specs than what this is. Granted, I wouldn't be able to take the Mac Mini with me without having the display with me, but I do that very, very sparingly. So for me, it would probably make sense. I'd probably get some better performance out of that than I would this 3-year-old machine, although this machine's working really well. So I was just curious who this, like, I think you kind of answered it, but who this would be for, how this would work. I don't know if most people go into looking for a computer saying, okay, I have this monitor, I have this keyboard, I have this mouse, let me find a computer.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Schooling where they can have a setup at home and a setup at school, and they have the same machine that they can take back and forth. Or like even for you, for your case, where you are doing live streams may not be where you edit. It may not be where you do other things. So you can have 3 different types of studios and it would just be, bouncing around. It's super powerful as far as what you can do with it. It just it depends on if that's your workflow or not. If that's not your workflow, then there's other options.
Sure. Brian, anything to reflect on with that?
I mean, Eddie, pretty solidly covered that, the who should buy, right? I fully agree that this is not a gaming machine by any stretch of the imagination. That GPU is just not there. And then once you start like, okay, well, if I stack 2 of these together and then get that GPU core, then it's like we just buy something that can do it all in one.
Fair enough. You guys are a little bit more on the computer versus computer conversation than I am, so I figured I would get your opinion on it. I thought it was kind of cool just because it's just something little that connects to stuff you already have, or you can buy the peripherals that you want, keyboard and mouse wise or trackpad wise or whatever, kind of make it whatever you want to make it. And it's just kind of cool in general. So I thought it was kind of something, and a lot of people were excited because it hadn't been refreshed for 4 years. And it was kind of modular where you can kind of upgrade things. Turns out not a ton of it, but the RAM and whatnot. So I thought it was kind of cool. Just something that had came out since we had talked last. So
yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I think it's one of Apple's more, ingenious products in a way because of that capability. It's not something that they took and someone else had already done it and I don't want to say perfected, but they made it more mass market appeal, gave it more mass market appeal. This is a product unlike really anything else that's out there.
It's plug and play.
Right. And they do it well. So apparently they didn't need to refresh it for 4 or 5 years. So,
yeah.
Or it's that low demand. They're trying to bring it back in.
Well, I think a lot of people are looking for the modularity to be the opportunity to upgrade certain aspects of it. They got a little bit of that with this. So I think the older ones are like the trash can looking little things. But this is another option if you're looking for a computer that's not necessarily $2,000 or whatever, and you have a monitor or you have a mouse or you were buying cheaper peripherals or things you wanted to get that were different. You didn't want the Apple keyboard and the Apple other stuff or other things. You can kind of make it what you want, which is exciting. And the other thing, which I think is probably more along the mainstream, would be the new iPad Pro, that is, for 2018. A lot of changes with that compared to most the iPads that you've ever used. So they did away with the home button, did the edge-to-edge design, added Face ID, have a couple options: the 11-inch option, 12.9-inch option, 9-inch option, which I think we saw with last year's iPad Pros. Or there's been 2 generations of
2 years. It's been 2 years since they released one.
Yeah. So they used the same gesture-based navigation that we see on the iPhone 10 and higher with Face ID. You can do Face ID unlock in landscape mode with the iPad, obviously, compared to that otherwise. The A12X Bionic chip. So me and they were talking about this a little bit beforehand. A powerful setup there for an iPad. So we'll probably get into that a little bit more. They added functionality with a new Apple Pencil that was brought out alongside it. One side being tapered to where you can magnetically connect it to the iPad and it charges in pairs in that fashion. The last way that this Apple Pencil charged, plugging it into the charging port and is just sticking out, was kind of wonky. I don't know that anybody really enjoyed using it that way. So this is a step up. This is answering all the questions people had about that. USB-C charging, which is kind of a big deal for Apple to finally switch things up as far as the mobile type of stuff goes, because I know the MacBooks kind of went that way. So this adds other functionality, being able to add additional accessories, an external display to the iPad, and it'll even charge other devices if you plug them in there. So these, for an iPad to start, an 11-inch iPad to start, Wi-Fi only at $800. That 11-inch can be spec'd up to $1,700. The 12.9-inch starts at $999 and upwards of $1,899, $1,899. We're talking about the cellular ones. So the highest end ones are Wi-Fi plus cellular. So we're talking about an $800 11-inch and a $1,000 12.9-inch. Who is this for, Edward?
Well, of course, iPad users, they'll definitely trade up and switch into it. I mean, realistically now, if I think about it now, it's for higher end people who want what is perceived as the best. Like, they're no longer selling, their phones. Like, most of their higher end products are reaching price points which they're becoming a luxury item. I don't think Apple really cares about the low end market anymore. And they could surprise me, I guess, with bringing out another mini or something. But at this point now, they keep that mini around that they're selling for still way more than it's worth as far as the performance goes. They've got the middle of the line 9.7-inch, and then they went all pro with this, which is it's a luxury item. So you've got maybe geared toward professionals, but yet the software's not quite ready yet.
Still got a mobile feel, like a large iPhone feel.
They have the hardware. They just need to adjust the software. But at this point, they don't really have. They're priced with their competition. Like, there's, you could argue that really only Android tablet maker that is making a higher end product is Samsung with the Tab S4, and it's not really along the same lines. It's more on the tablet side than it is on a multi-purpose, sort of laptop experience, like sort of computer experience. The Tab S4 kind of leans toward the mobile functionality side, and part of that's Android's fault, because it doesn't really have. Most Android apps are just blown up phone apps, like they're not made for it. But Google has shown that they're kind of moving Chrome toward the tablet space. So your Chrome tablets, which is the Pixel Slate, your Microsoft products, the Surface Go, and to a lesser extent, maybe the Surface Laptop 2 or the Surface Pro, and the iPad now, they're all competing in about the same price space. So I think it's just, that's what devices cost now. It's just pick your OS. And there's 99 RCA tablets, $99 RCA tablets at Walmart that you can read some stuff on and have an okay experience on. But as far as the true powerhouse devices, you're looking at Google for the Pixel Slate, the Microsoft Surface products, and Apple.
This is priced to a point where it's okay. It's to the point where I need to ask, is this now a laptop replacement option? Is this something you can use in place of a laptop in a similar price point?
I think I kind of alluded to this with like the Pixel Slate, right? If they can get the software for it, then yes. The problem is the software that you would want on a PC or on a Mac isn't there. What did you say, Eddie? Photoshop's coming what, next year?
Right? January 19. So that'll be the first.
Yeah, so that's one piece of the puzzle. And the next one would be hardcore video editing, not iMovie. And then the next piece is gaming, which, Google is currently testing through Chrome. But, that's once you kind of get there, that's where you have your desktop replacement. It's taken 10 years, but I think we're getting there.
It's just because to be a laptop replacement, I think we're adding the keyboard, the Bluetooth keyboard that they sell, or some sort of Bluetooth keyboard. So we're talking $199 for that. You're adding the Apple Pencil, which is $100 to get closer to the feel of a laptop and the functionality of a laptop. So I think we're already in the $1,200 to $1,500 range, or a little $1,100, if $800. Yeah, we're in that $1,100 range for the 11-inch iPad, so iPad Pro. So
you're over $2,000 if you do the 12.9 inch. I don't think we're gonna be. I don't think that laptop replacement is ever gonna be something it will be able to do. It's just the form factor is not there. Like, it's always gonna be top heavy. Those keyboard cases are, for the most part, fabric and a little bit of mechanics in them. When you snap them into place, it's still top heavy. Like, the back is still, you're not going to set it on your lap without it toppling over. I think that it's going to be a computing replacement, not necessarily a laptop replacement. Like, I think for a laptop, that form factor, if it sticks around, will always be something different. Like, this is like a Mac Mini with a screen, something that you can go and plug into a monitor and do work on. But it's going to be up to Apple to take advantage of that power, like what it's done with it. They need the software to back it up. So they're going to need mouse support. They're going to need keyboard support. They're going to need real software for professionals. Like, Photoshop is definitely a step in the right direction, but they're going to need a real video editing solution. They're going to need some, 3D type work solutions. And if they fulfill that promise, then this would have been worth it. If they're in the process of fulfilling it and they realize that this current generation can't do it, and they refresh it a year from now or 2 years from now, then it wouldn't have been worth it. But there's not really any way that you're going to know that, unless you are waiting to purchase it until the thing that you want to do is out and working and not in like a beta form.
I think that the only real difference, my iPad that I've kind of got to a point where I've only really used iPads as a tablet of choice. It's replaced paper and pencil for note taking in meetings. I think that's what you kind of alluded to. Like, it takes the place of basic computing. It doesn't really do anything after that. So I'm taking notes and it's saving them. I have Google Keep on this, so I'm reading off of it like a prompter, if you will. It's sitting folded up. It's the notes are there. Those types of things. The basic computing aspect is what it can help you do on a more mobile aspect. I don't know that it's going to do the things that a laptop, even a $600 laptop, is going to be able to do at this point. It's got the power, from what it seems you're saying, Eddie. It's got some power in it. It's just not really, the software is not going to give you, it doesn't have software applications that are going to give you the ability to do things on it like you can on a laptop. But
most of those are, again, the 1%. Like,
sure,
I don't know that the person that's looking through at Walmart and they see the iPads out, they're like, oh man, I wonder if I could get my Photoshop on this. Like, it's like Facebook, gaming, things like that, and it's stuff that the iPad does now very well. Like,
then why buy
app ecosystem?
Then why buy an $800 iPad? Who's going to buy an $800 iPad?
Someone who's going to do the same thing on a computer, but get a better experience on the iPad. So you could buy an $800 laptop, but it's not the same when you're laying in bed using the laptop as it is using an iPad. It's not the same transporting it. Battery life's not the same. I think that the iPad is a more convenient, it's a more anywhere product. Like it's going to go places you don't necessarily take your laptop. Like even into the bathroom, how many people take their laptop and sit on there? They typically take an iPad. So it's the same type of device. It's just getting more usage out of it. Unless you're a heavy typer, like unless you're doing things that require just a tremendous amount of typing. I mean, one could argue that the experience is better on the iPad for most apps. Most apps are being developed mobile first, which is the iPad. So that $800 to $1,000 range is just going to cover the basic consumer, and then your $1,500 to $1,800 range is going to cover the professional. But that one's a harder sell because the software is not there like it is for the regular consumer.
So I kind of agree, and you've got me to that point where if you're buying a computing device that's in that $800 to $1,000 range, and you're doing email, you're doing web browsing, YouTube, you're taking notes, you're doing those things, this is a more convenient aspect, unless you're doing a massive amount of typing. Even a lot of Bluetooth keyboards are really nice to be able to get a decent typing experience on something like that. So it's going to be able to do the basic computing things for you. And you're not spending more than $800 on a laptop that you'll probably get a better experience on this iPad with anyways. I think I pretty much summed you up pretty well there.
All right, and show's over. See you guys.
Yeah, have a good night. Take care. I mean, do you have, I don't want to say a disagreement on any of that, Brian, or I mean, I don't know if you use, I know you use Chromebooks as well, so that may kind of take the place of a tablet area.
The last tablet that I bought was the Nexus 9, which died on me twice. I resuscitated it once and have not gotten it back the second time. And since then, haven't used a tablet, to be honest. I had one provided to me through work that I use, a Galaxy Tab S, which is wicked old at this point. But I mean, when you're looking at it in terms of, devices that you're gonna get longevity out of, I was just talking about this today with a couple of people. They have a first generation iPad, right? Still uses a 30-pin connector, and it's still around and kicking and compatible with a lot of things. And yeah, so I mean, if you're gonna drop $800 on a tablet that is gonna last you, once again, 5 or 6 years, I mean, that's a pretty solid investment. If you're not looking to do anything too heavy, spend the money, get something nice if you have it.
I think yeah. Yeah, that's the end of every conversation with Brian. Is if you don't want to, just buy a Chromebook.
Well, I was in that position, right? I didn't have the money to drop on a new tablet like this, because this is something I would get. Didn't have that money, but I have enough money for my little Chromebook, and that thing is alive and kicking. I've had it for like 3 years, so
there you go.
Can't complain.
Like I said, I think it falls under the can do the basic computing aspects. So in a nicer form factor, like Eddie said, with a better experience with a lot of apps, because like Eddie said, they're mobile first developed. So this is where you're going to get that experience. You're going to want to use this on your lap instead of a laptop. You can fold the case over and walk it out the door. It's just a more seamless experience on the basic computing side of things. So if you're doing the note taking and the web browsing and the email and the some games too. I mean, with the processors coming in these things, I think you can do a decent amount of mobile gaming.
And I mean, developers are starting to, game developers are starting to take a mobile first approach to a lot of things. And Candy Crush really hammered home the fact that microtransactions will work and you can make a ton of money on it. Same with Clash of Clans. And
meaning in-app purchases.
Right. Yeah. In-app microtransactions, in-app purchases. So, I mean, yeah, that's they're starting to get there. And then what, Elder Scrolls, right, is coming out for.
Well, I mean, this chip in that iPad has the equivalent of an Xbox One, Xbox One S like power, as far as being able to compute the same amount, to crunch the same amount of numbers that an Xbox One S can. So, I mean, you've got some serious computing power in there. It's just, who's taking advantage of it, who's going to use it. I don't know that. I mean, there are some pretty cool games on there. I just don't know any gamers who are gaming on it. Like, it's just not. It hasn't won over that section of folks yet, other than some like Diablo style games, like or like the PvP games like Vainglory, and there's some other stuff coming to mobile. I think Diablo is one of them that is just those type
Final
of
Fantasy is ported over to mobile actually remarkably well, but even then, that's single player RPG at that point. That ports over like I said, surprisingly well. I own a number of them for my phone. Your real limitation is nobody has a good controller, right? You want a controller, and doing stuff on a touchpad is not the same, So having a controller, if someone can develop one that will actually function properly and pair properly and stay paired, that I think is a key that's missing too.
I would agree. I think that's a gaming feel that someone would have. And then if you have the mobile aspect of the tablet or whatnot, if you get like you said, something that stays paired and works well. I mean,
Nintendo did it with the Switch. I mean, they proved that you could have they could run right up against PlayStation and Microsoft, PlayStation and Xbox with the Switch that has not as much power, but it has every form factor imaginable. It has the portability form factor, like laying in bed, and all the way up to you can snap it into a controller, dock it, and play it on a television set. Like, Nintendo shows it can be done. It just is that where Apple is going to try to contend? Is that already Nintendo's? Is Nintendo the company to beat for that? Because they did it and they did it right.
I don't know. Apple likes to compete like that.
I mean, I think it's a sliver of the market that they're missing out on. Every major manufacturer is missing it. Sony was there for a little while with their Xperia product, right? You could link it to your PS4, but you're so heavily reliant on having a solid internet connection at home and where you were that it didn't. The experience wasn't great. Even over LTE, I tried it. You could pair your DualShock 4 to what did I have? What was that tablet called? I'm blanking on it, but yeah, either way, you could do remote play on it. You could pair your DualShock 4, but there was so much lag and latency and jitter, like you just couldn't. It just didn't work. You needed to be essentially connected in the house to the same Wi-Fi network, and even then, it was still a little laggy. And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, what's the point? Just boot whoever's using the TV away and play my Call of Duty there.
Fair enough. I mean, I think at the end of the day, to circle back to the iPad is where we were.
Right.
I mean, to replace a computer in the basic computing realm of note-taking and some gaming, which I think will get better based on I think we ended up at that point. It's going to become a better experience as time goes on, especially with the hardware they're running out and these things. Note-taking, some light gaming, some typing, depending on what your peripherals look like. This product is going to be able to do all those things for you, and probably in the same price point of a lower end computer laptop. So you're going to have some things you like better about the iPad, whether it be mobility wise or just ease of use wise, that will make you choose this over a $800 laptop. And then it's just going to get better because some of the experiences with these apps are better on the mobile version of it. So that's where you land. You land in picking this over something over a laptop that's $800 to $900 to $1,000. But I just spoke for all of you. You're welcome. So to round it back out, because I think we're just about good here. We talked about the MacBook Air 2018, basically the worrisome $1,200 price tag. But for what it is, I think we all agree that it's a good buy for someone that wants to keep this laptop for years and get good value in it. If you want to be in the Mac OS ecosystem and just have it work well for an extended period of time, it's a good buy, good money for value, good value for money, if you will. I think we all agree with that. You can nod.
I'm going to suddenly disagree with you.
Yeah. Well, you can just disengage from this. The Mac Mini, which I wasn't even sure if many people would know what it was. And what it offers people, I think, for an $800 price tag, like Eddie was speaking of, some functionality or some different diversity with it being able to be picked up and moved. Granted, you're providing your own monitor and peripheral keyboard and mouse and whatnot. For what it is, good internals, and doing well with kind of that entry-level sort of computing aspect as well, even probably a little bit further than the entry-level computing type of stuff. It goes beyond some of the taking notes and email, I think. So that's where that landed. And then the newer iPads also kind of taking the place of a lower-end laptop. If you're just going to do the basic computing stuff, it's at an $800 price point, can do all of those things for you and still give you a lot of the mobile stuff that we like to do on our phones. Have a better experience. I think I have a better experience on my iPad with YouTube than I do on a computer in general. So I'll pick that up before I'll pick up a laptop and use it. So it kind of places itself in that $800 range and take the place of the basic computing that you're going to buy a laptop for. So I think we can all recommend these for one reason or another. So if you're looking at any of those, take our word as gospel. I mean, it basically is. The only other thing
Eddie will smite you with a lightning bolt from Tesla.
He knows, yeah. The only other thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, just to get you guys' opinion on it, because this week it's starting to gear up, is the Samsung Galaxy X, if you will, the foldable phones. I don't have a question. Yes or no? Should this be the thing? What's it for? It's going to be pricey. We understand that because you can literally fold a phone in half. I was telling Eddie, I saw that Samsung had some sort of, it was an event about something else, but they shut the lights out, showed the hardware, but it was pre-production hardware. So they didn't want to actually show you what it was. They just showed you that they could fold it. So is there a niche for this? Niche? Is there a spot for this to live and thrive? Not so much. No.
I'm not sure.
In its current form, I don't think. It's cool. It's not, I don't think that the way that we see it on the presentation is the way that it's going to change everything. It's going to be something further down the line that changes it, something that rolls up or, but it's not going to be
something rolls on your wrist or something like that, which is
the old slap bracelets that you slap on, but that becomes your smartwatch, so to speak. Instead of having a physical large object on your wrist, you've got that little slap thing, and you smack it on there, and then it's displayed all the way around. Maybe in toys or vehicles where you've got something that expands and contracts from a space perspective, or in the home on your kitchen counter, something that can be pulled out and retract again. I don't know that it's going to be the revolution that kills the smartphone as we know it. I just don't think it's a different implementation of that I think is what you're saying will probably make it worth actually doing. Yeah. Someone has to go there. Someone has to do this.
You have to start
and engineer. Right. You have to start somewhere. And then it's just this what we saw on stage isn't going to be the thing that changes the world as we know it. It's going to be what that becomes is what's going to change the world.
I think you could see a lot of, uses for something like that in the medical field, right? Your doctor comes in, has an on-call phone that he can also open up into a tablet that has chart data. You know what I mean? Like, there are practical uses for that. And it's once someone designs something that actually does that, that I think will be your turning point. Because it looks a little janky. So let's see where it goes.
Jankies came out in a little bit.
I know. I mean, it's an interesting concept, and when you start looking into applications like that, and you also need software developers to get on board for it, which Google has opened it up. Like, foldable displays are going to be a thing. Develop for them. Once we find those markets and figure out software for it, I think it could really turn into something cool. Right now, it's like, this is great if I want to watch a movie on my phone without carrying a tablet around. Take your phone, open it up, and you're good.
I like I like the thought process of what you guys are thinking, where this is generation 1 of a technology, not necessarily the product itself, but a version of technology that is going to have many applications throughout other types of products. So this technology is showing its face initially in this product, but will probably show its most usefulness in other products down the way, in other generations and future generations of that technology.
And there's a good chance it's not going to be something that the average consumer is going to see either. I see more usable applications in medical or military or other fields than the average consumer walking around with a foldable phone. I mean, I'm sure one of us three is going to end up buying one when they come out.
We know which one of us is going to buy
it. And it's Eddie. But, that being said, I mean, you're going to hit that. Samsung's doing what it does really well with innovative products like this. They're going to hit that niche market that really thinks it's cool and really wants it. And then they're going to.
Who's to say it's not going to be a billboard technology where they can wrap this stuff around anything, or put displays on almost any type of structure, to where you can have a billboard, an advertisement anywhere, not just putting up a poster around a pole, and then be able to remotely control the content that's on that pole or whatever surface you want to throw this display on. The more we start talking about it, the more like, okay, this is kind of practical, but it's the technology that's practical. It's not necessarily the product.
I don't think it's going to be a consumer product. I think it's going to end up in, like Brian says, in other fields. I think that augmented reality is what's going to win. Like Microsoft HoloLens type stuff is what's going to ultimately be what kills phones. But it's not going to happen until Apple does it, which is what they're very aggressively approaching now. There are some things that Apple is working on now, augmented reality wise, that I think when they are ready to show that is going to be the next step from a consumer standpoint. But I mean, who knows at this point? The cost will keep it. The foldable stuff, those type of displays, the cost will keep it
out of the mainstream
in the professional field for a while until it comes down enough to be in other places.
Well, I'm glad at least we talked about it, because I hadn't thought about it in that way. So I think that makes a ton of sense, and now I'm enlightened. So great, I'm better for it. That was about the majority of what I had to talk about. Hopefully that some of the newer Apple products and what we talked about and who may enjoy it or what they're for helps you guys kind of get a feel for if it's for you and what you're looking for. So feel free to roll back through there, listen to whatever version of that whatever category makes sense for you. So normally around this time, I like to give Eddie a chance to kind of plug himself. He does his own content on YouTube on his own personal channel, and kind of see if you have anything going on right now, videos that are coming out, stuff that you're looking at that's going to be posted soon.
Yeah, it's been a busy week for Tesla stuff. So my channel's Eddie Daniels. Think that if you put in the All Things Tech Nerd, I think it shows up on top of the clarinet player. Found that out. But the much awaited next version of autopilot software came out, where it's able to take its own exits, on and off ramp, and change lanes on its own with some assistance from you, just to make sure that it's not being too aggressive. So that's out now for everyone. And I think it shows that's what I'm looking at now, is not so much how the vehicle responds, but how people respond to the vehicle. I think that the more this vehicle drives itself, the more that I realize that the rest of the world isn't going to make it easy for self-driving vehicles. Like, it's almost going to have to happen all at once. It just, by the way that it calculates things, and it's cautious about certain things, and it operates in a way that is very robotic and not human-like. And I think that that human drivers don't understand how to drive around a vehicle that drives itself. I guess they can't wrap their head around how it operates, and it almost makes it dangerous as far as that other people are concerned. Like, they're not prepared for a computer driver. It's just a different style of driving. So every update that comes by and everything that it starts doing on its own make me believe a little bit more that it's not what's really going to hold self-driving vehicles back are people. I think that Skynet probably said something like that. What's really holding us back is people. Let's just get rid of them. This is like, we could do this.
That's what the car is going to start saying, Eddie.
Like, we could totally do this if there were just no people around.
We don't even need them anymore. We just do this ourselves.
So, but I think that, and that's what, I've been just trying to test reactions and the things that it does, and like just catching the people behind me and the people next to me, their reactions based on something that's driving.
You sleeping in your car while your car is driving.
Well, just as an example, there is a superhuman-like detection for other vehicles around, and a superhuman anticipation. Like, spider sense is like the best thing I can compare it to, where a vehicle is going to turn with no blinker on, but because of the change in rate of speed, the vehicle already knows it's happening, but the person behind you, everybody traveling at 70 or 75 miles an hour, the person behind you doesn't have a visual cue, and they don't have specialized hardware which tells them that the rate of deceleration here is going to mean that this person is going to make a turn 1,500 feet away and is going to slow down by 30 miles an hour. So the vehicle preemptively slows down, and the person behind can't understand why. And then 3 seconds later, that vehicle's lights come on, and a turn signal comes on, and it turns. Like,
if we're lucky, if the turn signal turns on.
But no matter what, like, it's seconds before a person would realize what was happening. The math was already calculated based on GPS signal of where this road is, the rate of deceleration on the vehicle in front. So now I'm going to slow down preemptively because I know this vehicle is going to turn. And the person behind gets confused because they're using their eyes, which tell them significantly less than a specialized set of hardware that's in the bumper of a vehicle. So it's things like that. And as it gets smarter, I think that is what's going to cause regular human drivers to have either accidents where they rear end self-driving vehicles, or they, you know, they cause themselves distress or to make some kind of illogical maneuver because they can't understand that what the vehicle is seeing, because it sees the world differently than we do. So that's the kind of stuff that
I was going to say, is there something you're working on video wise that would be kind of covering that?
Yes, and it's just trying to figure out how to show that without, because it's not easy to get the permission of people to show them in video form, unless I chase them down and say, "Hey, I need your. I see, you know how you gave me the finger back there? I need you to, I need you to that for a video clip." So just basically figuring out how to do that is the real way. Like it's easily shown and it's super cool and it's really fun. And in some cases it's hilarious to videotape this. It's just that once I have the footage, figuring out how to get it online without having any type of permission from certain people is what I have to work on next. So
sure. Cool. So I guess we'll be looking forward to that. People flipping you off on the highway. So that's exciting. But I think that's the majority of what we want to talk about. We covered a bunch of different stuff, things that had came out since we talked last, mostly Apple products. So they kind of came in a flurry there, and then gave Eddie. First of all, don't go to the Clarinet Players YouTube channel. This is Eddie Daniels. All Things Tech Nerd, I believe, was the keyword that we're looking at to try to catch him. And then you can see the stuff he's talking about. And I think he does some different sort of hardware reviews and things like that as well. So, but other than that, we appreciate you guys kind of tuning in and getting a feel for what stuff has come out recently. And hopefully at least we've given you a little bit of an idea of if these products are for you, if you're in the market, and what they can do for you. So for episode 9, I'd like to say thanks. Eddie, would you say bye?
See you later, and thank you.
And Brian.
Bye, Eddie.
Very nice. Thanks again, guys. Until the next episode.